ahead and get started. I know we have some folks still joining, but we've got a lot we want to talk to you all about today. Starting with, hi, my name is Charlotte Cahill. I'm an associate vice president in the education practice here at JFF, and I lead our Pathways to Prosperity work. About which we can say more in a minute. But to start with just a quick overview for those of you who may not be familiar with JFF and or Pathways to Prosperity. JFF is a national nonprofit organization. We've been around for about 40 years now, a little over 40 years, and really focused on a mission of working across education and workforce development systems to ensure equitable economic advancement for all. Our Pathways to Prosperity work is part of how JFF seeks to achieve that mission. Through Pathways to Prosperity, we are focused on building out education to career pathways systems that really support young people in building the skills and knowledge that they need to launch and succeed in meaningful careers. As part of that work, we work with all kinds of different folks across the country. We work at the state and regional levels, and we work with national partners and networks. We work with state policymakers, 2 and 4 year colleges and universities, workforce and economic development agencies, K-12 educators, community-based organizations, intermediary organizations, and business and industry partners. And we'll dig in much more on that work with business and industry partners in our webinar today. And we think it's really critical to work with all of those folks as we think about our Pathways to Prosperity framework, which is focused on 5 key levers for pathways systems. And the first 3 of these levers are in many ways about elements of education to career pathways themselves. So we support alignment and integration across secondary and post-secondary education systems, inclusive of dual enrollment strategies, but really thinking about how we're building out seamless connections across those systems that will support young people in getting from high school into and through post-secondary education and into good jobs. We also know that it's critical for pathways to incorporate a focus on building career navigation systems that don't put the onus on young people and their families to sort of figure everything out for themselves, but really develop systems level strategies for equitable career navigation processes or practices that support young people in both understanding their education and employment options and in starting to think about what does it look like to build a professional network? What other kinds of skills and connections do I need in order to successfully launch a career? The third lever, work-based learning, is one that we will say much more about in just a minute, so I'm going to not say anything about it right now. But the other 2 levers are really focused on some of the infrastructure that is essential to building out pathways that incorporate the first 3 levers. So one of those levers is intermediaries. So we know that intermediary organizations are critical partners in this work and play a key role in convening partners across systems and really making sure that Pathways work is helping everybody accomplish what they need to do for their day job, essentially, and play an especially important role in supporting work-based learning and supporting the development of partnerships across industry and education. And the last of the Pathways levers, leadership and policy, is really focused on the enabling policy conditions that we know need to be in place to make the rest of this work possible. So with that, we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive on work-based learning. I could talk about all of the reasons I think work-based learning is important for the next 54 minutes. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to move quickly here. But just to say that I shouldn't have a favorite pathways lever, and if I did, it would be work-based learning. And it's because I see it as a really critical driver of equity in pathways systems. So JFF defines work-based learning as experiences in which students or workers complete meaningful job tasks in workplaces. And those job tasks should develop readiness for work as well as the knowledge and skills needed to enter and advance in a career. Um, and we think of work-based learning as a continuum that encompasses sort of three distinct phases or approaches to work-based learning. And so just to say first, as you're looking at this continuum, that is not exactly a continuum, and more about that in a minute. To say we think of this fourth category of career exploration. So things like career fairs or industry projects that we know are really important ways of preparing young people for work-based learning, but that are not themselves kind of occasions to complete meaningful job tasks in a workplace as really critical pieces of an approach to career navigation and preparation for work-based learning. And then as we think of different types of work-based learning, we do sort of divvy them up according to sort of their level of intensity and sort of corresponding lift for both educators and industry partners. But while many folks kind of think of work-based learning as a continuum, JFF has instead adopted this graphic with confusing arrows that point every which way. And you might wonder why we should have chosen to do such a thing. And the reason for that is that we really think of work-based learning as an opportunity for participants to understand both what they don't like as well as what they do like. And we know that this is not just a checklist, but a really intentionally sequenced set of experiences. And in fact, right, if someone completes a work-based learning experience and then um, it turns out they don't like it for some reason, right? If you're sort of in an internship in healthcare and you don't like it, you probably shouldn't do a healthcare apprenticeship. You should go back and do a job shadow in another industry and see how that works out for you. So that's why this is structured in this way. And then just very quickly, I think said briefly that we think work-based learning has a lot of value for folks. And as we think about the value of work-based learning for students, and if I could get the next slide, please, we really think about it as a set of interconnected benefits. And different pieces of work-based learning along the continuum really help young people get to these different benefits. So not all types of work-based learning are going to achieve all of these outcomes, but across the board, if we are intentional in how we sequence it, we think that we can really get young people to all of these outcomes. And we know that work-based learning is also really valuable for employer partners. If I could get the next slide, please. So, right, 80% of employers say that internships provide higher ROI than other recruiting methods that they've tried. Up to 60% of interns convert to full-time employees, and over 75% of those interns are still on the job after 1 year. So really high retention rates too, from an employer perspective. And I'm going now to turn this over to my colleague Caroline to introduce herself and our panelists. But just to say, we actually um, did in our webinar, in a previous Pathways to Prosperity Coalition webinar, a deep dive on work-based learning. So if you want much more on JFF's framework and how we think about all of this, um, please watch the recording and happy to follow up with any of you on it. Caroline, I will turn it over to you now to kick us off for today.
Great. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And hi, everyone. My name is Caroline DeAndrea. I'm a senior manager at JFF, and I'm excited to be with you all today for the conversation. So thanks for joining. We're going to spend most of our time in a panel conversation, but quickly before we move into that, I just want to provide a bit more context for why we're diving even more into work-based learning. So we know that it's of interest to you all. We've heard that from our partners in the field, and I think you can also see that from all the people that are here today, which is great. And Charlotte also just talked a little bit about why work-based learning matters. But we also know that work-based learning is hard to do well, and the employer engagement piece is such a critical component of doing it well. We know that employers come to the table for different reasons, and that their company's motivations for engaging in work-based learning often shift as labor markets or organizational priorities or industry demands evolve. So what might begin as a straightforward talent pipeline initiative can really transform into a more complex web of considerations, from changing skill requirements and staffing patterns to shifts in organizational capacity and leadership buy-in. And when there is long-term commitment, there are, of course, still the day-to-day realities and competing priorities that need to be navigated to sustain relationships. So we know that the day-to-day requires real work and real partnership. And we want to acknowledge the reality of navigating the work-based learning partnerships and dive into that. So today's event, as we've shared, centers the perspective of employers so that those who sit everywhere, or perhaps in K-12 or higher ed, can better understand the benefits and challenges of work-based learning from employers' point of view. So in just a few moments, they will share more about their engagement in work-based learning programs and systems, and how that commitment has really been sustained or evolved over time. One other quick note, some of the guest speakers that we've brought in today work with P-TECH programs. So for those who are not familiar with P-TECH, P-TECH stands for Pathways in Technology Early College High Schools. So this is an early college model that aims for all participating students to earn a high school diploma, an industry-recognized associate degree, and gain relevant work experience in a growing field. So JFF has been working with P-TECH sites for many years, and we're excited to bring some of their partners to the conversation today. So not all of our speakers partner with P-TECH sites, but some do. So I just wanted to clarify that language if it's used during our conversation today. But I really think what our panelists share is really applicable across pathways models that are implementing work-based learning. So as you listen to our speakers, please put any questions you have for them in the chat. We will spend the bulk of our time in the panel conversation, but we'll spend a couple of minutes in Q&A at the end of our session today. So now I'd like to introduce our moderator for our conversation today, Tristan Lisowski. Tristan is the Executive Director of P-TECH and Early College Programs at Dallas Independent School District, Dallas ISD. He and his team have been really wonderful partners to us and to their peers across the country, with Dallas ISD scaling the P-TECH model and partnering with employers to provide work-based learning opportunities across the district. So I'm going to turn it over now to Tristan to introduce himself a bit more and introduce our panelists.
Awesome. Thank you, Caroline, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So really when we look at, I think a little bit of context maybe about the school district that I serve, Dallas ISD, and then also the P-TECH program itself. So Dallas ISD, student enrollment of about just under 140,000 students, so one of the largest urban school districts in the United States. We have over 9,000 students that participate or enrolled in the P-TECH program. And really, when we talk about work-based learning and the opportunities that it presents to students, it's a foundational component of the P-TECH program. So students starting in grade 9, engaging in those relevant work-based learning experiences, gradually, working toward, internship opportunities their junior or senior year. So the program in Dallas ISD started in 2016, and we've scaled that out, to be one of the largest P-TECH early college programs in the nation. And through that work, really with work-based learning and the emphasis on that over the course of really almost the last 10 years, our school district as a whole really has, and our superintendent really has taken a strong look at the work that's been done through P-TECH, and we've actually since sort of scaled out workforce development across our entire district. So work-based learning used to be just something that was exclusive to P-TECH and the students that were enrolled in P-TECH. But if you've ever heard, our superintendent speak about the work that she does in Dallas ISD, she refers to our school district as the economic engine of the city of Dallas. So they've actually developed an entire department, a workforce development department that's actually focused on expanding and scaling work-based learning across all of the entire district within Dallas. So it's exciting work. I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate JFF for creating time and space for us to have the conversation. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to speak to our panelists here today. So I think without further ado, I think we'll jump in. So we'll go ahead, and I think we can just go in the order in which we're here. So I'm excited for Deanna, Patrick, and Marisol to join us today and to talk about their experiences with work-based learning and the work that they engage in to support this. So I think with that said, I think we'll go ahead and jump in. So we'll start with you, Deanna. I think since you're first up on the screen, first picture to the left, if you don't mind just introducing yourself, name, company, position, and then we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. It's exciting to see so many people on the call. I am Deanna Noggles, and I am an associate director with Accenture. Accenture is a global professional services company. We help our clients become the next and best versions of themselves. We're about 800,000 people worldwide. We serve our clients in 200 cities across locations and operations across 49 countries. Also across industry. So those clients, the type of work that we do is consulting, strategy, operations, technology across all industries. Thank you. Over to you, Patrick.
Hello, I'm Patrick Todd. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources with a company called RTC Communications in Southern Indiana. So we are an internet service provider, and we also provide business class telephone services to industries and schools across the United States. So basically, we're a smaller version of like a Verizon or AT&T or Frontier. We're more of a local co-op based in Southern Indiana with our internet services servicing about 10,000 people right now. Marisol?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Marisol Rodriguez. I serve as the Director of Literacy at a Dallas-based education nonprofit called United to Learn. So our mission is to change lives by transforming the relationships between communities and schools. We currently partner with and work with 103 elementary public schools. And thank you, JAF, for having us here today. And I look forward to a meaningful conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So we'll get started with our first official question here. So if you don't mind, and we'll go ahead and we'll start with you again, Deanna. Can you share a brief overview of how your company engages with work-based learning systems and programs?
Absolutely. So we have a framework that we call impact hiring. And the way that we engage from a workplace learning perspective is we have two programs. One, which is based on targeting college-age students, that we consider our Skills to Succeed internship program and or apprenticeship program. The second category is Learning to Lead. Learning to Lead program is the program that we target high school students. And both of those programs empower untapped talent who have traditionally lacked access to the digital economy. They may include, but not limited to, individuals who demonstrate strong financial need and or first-generation college students, et cetera. So with those programs, we actually look at, so as you can imagine, we've been doing this a number of years. Since 2010, we kicked off the Skills to Succeed internship program, which provides early college exposure and work experience to high school and college age individuals. We partner with our corporate citizenship partners as well as higher ed and our local K through 12s. And we do that across all cities. We have about 20 different cities that we partner. So that's one component. So that's the Skills to Succeed internship program. But then we also have what we call our Learning to Lead, which I mentioned. And that's also empowering untapped youth for future success. And I can give more details, but that is, if you could think about core pillars of our program would be professional development, technology and research, business and financial literacy, team building, social responsibility, and holistic well-being. How do we tap specifically into Dallas, into the Dallas Independent School District? We leverage both of these programs to attract the students of the Dallas ISD P-TECH program and have been in partnership with the Dallas ISD P-TECH program since 2014-15 timeframe. And we were the first, one of the first companies to sign up as the as an industry partner for Dallas ISD P-TECH. And since then, we've started with pulling and drawing the students into both of these programs, our Skills to Succeed internship program, as well as Learning to Lead. So I know that's a lot, but it's hard to talk about the programs and not share the details.
Thank you so much, Deanna. Patrick, maybe I'll pass it on to you, and I can repose the question if you'd like.
No, I think I roll here a little bit. So my company is totally outside the educational world or anything that's been involved in a lot of this stuff. So RTC Communications has had nothing more than a typical job shadowing program for high school students that have come in and visited. And I had previously worked in human resources in a regional hospital. And at that time, we had a significant focus on growing our own medical staff. As I transitioned to this tech company a few years ago, the situation for staffing was similar, but on a much smaller scale. So we still had a need to grow our own computer and network engineers, as well as other technical staff positions. But in our rural and southwest, in our rural area in Southwest Indiana, we compete with probably the third largest naval installation in the United States Navy body, with Crane, Indiana, and it's mostly a naval research facility. So there's incredible amount of computer engineering, nuclear engineers, all kinds of electronic technicians and so forth that snag a lot of local talent. So for us, we know the importance of growing our own to bring in and hold our own electrical engineers, our network engineers. So ROI out of Bloomington, they came to us a couple of years ago with this program and had this model of a deeper, more thorough apprenticeship program, which we've been engaged with ever since for about the last 3 years now. I believe we're on our third round of apprentices. And so far, none of the students in the earlier apprenticeships programs have stayed with us as an employee after high school graduation, but we do have one now that is very likely to stay with us at least through college. And so it's been a very good, successful program so far. So that's kind of our engagement in a nutshell.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll pass it over to you, Marisol.
Yeah, so we run a program called Aspiring Teachers, where we actively partner with 5 P-TECH high schools and early college campus, the Education Magnet, and 4 local colleges and universities. And so we provide work-based learning experiences for students who are interested in, are committed to, or just exploring an education career. And so these opportunities involve us placing these students into our elementary school partners as tutors. They go to the elementary schools multiple times a week. This is a paid internship, and they work with early learners on literacy skills. We, see this as mutually beneficial because our campuses, our elementary campuses, are getting some additional support, and then our high school and college students are gaining some new knowledge and skills. We also provide workshops specific to college and career readiness. So anything from doing a mock interview setup to practice those interview skills to resume writing, and then opportunities for networking, because we also feel it's important for our work-based learning opportunity to provide some opportunities to build some social capital. So at the current time, we have about 100 tutor interns. We have been able to keep track of some of them from when we started with them in high school, now them being full-time college students. We have employed a couple of them for summer internships, and then have one of our former interns on staff now.
Thank you, Marisol. cool kind of full circle moment for me. So my earliest experience with work-based learning was as an assistant principal at one of our P-TECH programs, and we had a teacher education pathway, and this was pretty early on in the process, at least for P-TECH and Dallas ISD, and our students were working to try to, there are curriculum requirements for dual credit classes as far as what students have to complete field experience hours and those things. And it's really incredible the work that Mary Saul and her team does at United to Learn in terms of providing students with an opportunity to kind of earn and learn, through their programs. So through the tutoring experience with United to Learn. So it's awesome to have her here, and yeah, appreciate you, Mary Saul. Let's see. So we'll go back to Deanna here for this one. So what was your company's initial motivation for engaging in work-based learning?
Beautiful, beautiful question. So I would say it's threefold. It is investing in early career exposure and work experience for the untapped population of students and young adults in an effort to invest in the next generation. That's number one. Number two, I would say, is ensuring that we position the very same students for livable wages so that regardless of how they start, it's not how they end. And then the third, I would say, creating a workforce pipeline for the Dallas-Fort Worth area and across all of our U.S. cities. As you can imagine, the size company we are, we don't just focus on one city, we're across the U.S. And the idea is retaining the talent in the cities. How do we help our corporations, the very companies that we're serving from a consulting perspective, to retain talent from that city so that they're not lacking the resources and the talent that they need, and that the talent is actually prepared. The other point I'd say, if I had to add a fourth point, would be understanding that as technology evolves, we need to help the schools, the districts, and the nonprofits level up from a technology perspective, because it evolves daily, as you can imagine. I mean, what you knew yesterday changes the next day, the next 6 months, and so forth. So with the focus on leveraging how we go to market from a technology perspective, we've also looked at opportunities as to how do we support school districts and nonprofits as well as our students. So that was our motivation, and we started that probably almost 20 years ago, and the programs have just evolved and gotten stronger over the years.
Awesome. Thank you, Deanna. And Patrick?
She's got a much more eloquent answer than I do. So because we are the company that seeks out the employees, first and foremost, our engagement was to build a future workforce for ourselves. We realize again that there's talent that leaves our area. As I said earlier, we're in a competition for talent. Everybody is across the United States, but whereas your schools there at Dallas Independent School District has thousands upon thousands. The town I'm physically located in for our company is less than 700 people. And so we have a lot of the high school graduates that up and leave the area for areas like Indianapolis, Chicago, Dallas. I would say Pensacola, Florida, and it's sunny side, but it's not too warm down there in Pensacola right now. But as a company, we're growing and looking for talented people, and this program offers a very low risk way of bringing in young people to the organization that could potentially be fully employable within 24 months or so. So we look at it as building our workforce, bringing these young kids in. And I think it is a 2-year-long interview process. We can bring these guys in, see how they work, these young adults, and what their skill sets are and what their interests may be, work with them. But there's also, community involvement. There's a lot to reflect back on for us to be engaged in our communities, and also to be able to work with our schools to give them feedback on the student behavior and the skill sets of the students. So we are a cooperatively owned company. So we have some public relation needs, as any company does. And we have a very long history of being involved in our community that it serves, and including our local partners in the schools.
Appreciate that, Patrick. Thank you. Mary Saul?
Yeah, for us at Unite to Learn, we really saw our initial motivation is we just saw the need to address two critical topics here. So we saw there was, a shortage of highly skilled, passionate educators, as well as the need to support our elementary schools, especially post-pandemic. As an education nonprofit, we were at the forefront of understanding how it really impacted the educational landscape. So by creating our Aspiring Teachers program, we recognize that providing a hands-on real world experience for, future educators or, education advocates, if they decide to take another career path, was a win-win, because we were supporting our elementary schools while building knowledge and skills in these, future workforce generation that, will hopefully stay in Dallas as excellent educators, or, whatever industry they decide to go into, will understand what it's like to be in a classroom, to be a teacher, and what it takes, to educate our students. So it was just a way for us to really step into that role and provide these work-based experiences, building knowledge and skills in future educators, while supporting our partner elementary campuses. And then I'll say we also saw this as an opportunity to strengthen the sense of community amongst our young people. So, like Deanna and Patrick mentioned before, with the hopeful outcome of retaining talent in our city. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Awesome. Thank you, Marisol. So obviously, and Deanna, for you engaging in this work, for quite a while now, why does Accenture and why do you continue to engage? What keeps you around, and continue to do this work?
Yeah. Well, I would say that it's there are a number of reasons. One, we're seeing the results, right? We're seeing the positive results and the impact that we're having. I can use Dallas ISD P-TECH program. Since 2016, more than 4,200 students have graduated with associate's degrees or 60 credit hours. And I'm proud to say that we have contributed to that success. So that's number one. The second is, I would say, we're seeing the win-win results through our own program. So when we start with students in our Learning to Lead program, where they earn a stipend, I'm seeing some of the questions where they actually earn a stipend for learning. We're seeing those very students come back and to work with us, right? They're coming back to and signing up to be Skills Succeed interns, and then ultimately being hired with us. So what a win-win situation across the board, where we can start creating a pipeline of talent that has been untapped in many ways, or may not have been able to identify. So we're able to do that. We start with high school and we take them all the way through college if they're still interested. So I'd say that would be the top two reasons for why we continue.
Patrick, what do you think?
Again, she very good examples, and I think we're all kind of all on the same board here. We've had some great students. These young people come into our workplace and bring in light and energy, and it's so fun to work with some of these young. And again, I'm in the tech world, and as Charlotte, I think, mentioned early in the intro about work in healthcare, is because I was in healthcare, and I would see young high school kids come in to explore nursing careers, and they would pass out in the OR, and they would pass out in labor and delivery, and so they learn very quickly that job area may not be for them. So it's great to see and work with the youth and funnel them into future career paths. And so for us, one of the key things has been ROI Incorporated is a great intermediary that makes it so easy for me as an employer to work with the schools, to work with the students. They take care of kind of the educational plans. I've never been in education. Matter of fact, I think I was kicked out a few times when I was younger. But I enjoy working with ROI and knowing the educational importance that we're delivering to the students in keeping the schools and the students' missions aligned. It's fun to work with our local schools to give them the impact. We too give a stipend, so we have an employer responsibility, and that's one thing. Montgomery, or RTC Communications in Montgomery, doesn't get any monies or anything for taking the apprenticeships program on. Indiana does have a partial reimbursement program where we can apply back for so much money of their wage and receive that back in a reimbursement from the state. It's a little bit cumbersome, but there's an opportunity there for us in Indiana to do that. but as an employer, I have all the legal responsibilities for the student as I do any other employee. Plus, there's a little bit more. I need to make sure that if I bring in a 16-year-old young man or young woman into my workplace and I pair them with a mentor, I don't want them exposed to a lot of workplace vulgarities and the stupid jokes and the things. So, everything in human resources I worry about day to day, but I'm not heavily focused on. I'm now, got to make sure I'm in tune to that. And so I sharpen my own kind of tool sets with learning youth laws a little bit more closer, knowing what's going on and how that can apply. And we cross some logistics with the schools about what the students can and cannot do as far as being underage and going out with installation or repair technicians. So it's really breathed a lot of life into our company and just brings a lot of joy for us.
Marisol.
Yeah, and for us, this is our third year of running this program, Aspiring Teachers, and we've actually seen some tangible results of the work. So that's, obviously cause for celebration and continued engagement. We've seen improved literacy rates among our younger learners, and then for our interns, we see a development of, confidence and competence, and they're walking into the room with much more assuredness of themselves. So we love engaging with the students and just seeing their growth throughout. We also see a stronger connection to their communities. So many of our tutor interns are going back into some of the schools that are part of their own ecosystem. And so we hope that that engagement from them as young people would just translate to the next step of their career. It's, an investment in our community, in our city, in our industry. And I would also say, additionally, it offers us some valuable insight into this next generation that's stepping into the workforce, so that we can then strategize and plan on our hiring practices, on how we train and retain talent, and really identify where we can grow and evolve as an employer. So the students do teach us a lot. We learn new things from them and what works, how they like to be led, how they like to be motivated, how they themselves lead, and that just helps us become a better employer overall.
Yeah, I love that, Marisol. Thank you for sharing. I think we have one final question before we transition over to our Q&A. So Deanna, what is one piece of advice that you would give schools looking to partner with companies like yours to support work-based learning for their students?
Yeah, so I would say for schools, I think it needs to start at the district level, meaning you need a program, because it's really hard, as my experience has taught me, to say, oh, we're going to bring in speakers to link to this respective topic. I do think it's important at the district level to have a framework as to how they're going to work with corporations, so that it's not the onesie and twosies, but it's more of a structured and organized way to engage the companies. And once that's in place, it's such as a PTech program. I'm not suggesting it has to be a PTech or early college program, but some form of a program where companies can talk at a higher level and then be aligned to a respective school. Because I do think that it helps with overall programming and to know where to go, when, where, and how, and you're receiving the guidance from at the leadership level. The second point I would say is be open to learning something different, especially in the technology space. Technology is driving the world, and we need to ensure that our students are on top of what the latest and greatest is, and not just through their cell phones or gaming and things like that, but really how it's impacting the way that the world is working now. And I use AI as an example, right? There, a lot of people steer away from AI, but as we know, AI is around us everywhere and every day, and it has been for many years. So it's important for our students, as an example, to learn what AI is and to bring those companies in, if you can, to educate the students on that. So really be open to different types of topics that may not be embedded within your curriculum, and weave those in ways that, because I understand, just with with the school districts that you have to kind of stick to a certain curriculum and so forth. But I believe there's a way to weave the very important topics in to show how this very topic or curriculum is evolving right before your eyes. So that would be I'd say my top two.
Thank you, Deanna. Patrick, anything else that you would give?
Chiming in there, as you engage employers, make sure you listen to the employers. Make sure that we feel like we have a voice in shaping our future workforce. As a going on mid-50s kind of guy, been out in the workplace for a long time, and seeing kids come out, I grumble about their soft skills, their hard skills, what they know, what they're trained in. And so it's really important that the schools listen to us, and our local schools have gone well over and beyond, in my mind, to bring employers in and make it purposeful listening sessions with us as to what we need in our workforce. So as schools reach out to employers and say, hey, please take these students. Oh, and by the way, we're going to ask you to pay the student. We're going to ask you to mentor the student. Make sure that you're letting the employer have the opportunity to give feedback and adhere to that feedback.
Yeah, and I would say, approach the employer with, a vision, or take the time to set a vision together. That way your goals and expectations are aligned and clear from the start. Approach it in a spirit of collaboration. There's mutual benefits for both parties involved. And so having that open-mindedness and making sure there's communication throughout. And a third thing I would say, something I love, once you do have a partner, I really enjoy when our partners, invite us to things like pep rallies or celebrations at schools. It just keeps us that much more engaged and just really wanting to continue the partnership. So, adding a personal touch, don't be afraid to do that. It's much harder to say no to when you've seen, the students' faces. So I would encourage, you to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Deanna, Patrick, and Marisol. And I think this last question, I think, is one that resonated with me as well. And I know one thing that our team has done, I think, to try to help, we've onboarded, over 100 industry partners to date, since we launched in 2016. And I think through those experiences, and you brought it up, Marisol, like having a vision, I think, is incredibly important. And I think one of the things that our team has done, and we've sort of enhanced and modified over the years, is like really kind of narrowing down to what are the experiences that we would want our students to engage with, and then meeting the partners where they're at in terms of these are the things that we would like for our students to be able to do. You don't have to do all of things, right? But is there an area that you can lean in and assist with, right? And I think it's kind of meeting the partners where they're at and making it as easy as possible for them, and meeting them where they're at. So just a little bit of my perspective to that last question as well. But again, thank you, Deanna, Patrick, and Marisol, for sharing and taking the time out of your schedules today. And I'm going to pass it over to Caroline, I think, to take a look at some of the questions that were dropped into the chat.
Yes, thank you so much, Tristan, and to all of our panelists too. That was really, really great information, and I appreciate how we heard some similar themes come up across each of your responses, but also the unique context of each of your organizations, both for perhaps the communities you serve, like Pat, what you were saying about rural Indiana, and then looking at the Dallas area too. So just really appreciate all of the unique perspectives that you brought. And Tristan, thanks for moderating such a great conversation. So we do have about 10 minutes for Q&A, which is great. And I have been seeing questions come in through the chat. So please feel free to keep posting those and we'll get to as many as we can. The first one I'm going to start off with, there's been a couple of versions of a question around the conditions that need to be present between a company and a school system or district to make these work-based learning partnerships happen. And in particular, who needs to be on board on both sides for the partnership to really kick off and be sustained over time. So would open it up to any of the four of you to get us started with that one.
I don't mind jumping in here, and I guess it's, an opportunity for me to, I guess, continue to advocate for PTech, just because work-based learning and so much of what we discussed here today, it's built in and it's woven into just the fabric of the program itself. So in Texas, we have a blueprint that actually outlines what what our programs need to include, and work-based learning is included as part of that. So I think when you have that expectation that's established from, our state education agency, and then we've obviously included those programs at our schools, it just creates the environment to allow work-based learning to at least, where you have the foundation and you can at least start to engage in those conversations and begin reaching out. So it kind of, at least for us at that level, it started at least having a program or having somebody that can advocate for the importance of that. And for us, the avenue to do that was PTech.
I think for myself, as ROI reached out, they were hitting a lot of the HR folks. From what I understand from them, they spent some time contacting companies and were paired with employees who weren't decision makers. And so it's pretty quickly that as you reach out to employers, you have to find the decision makers. Depending on the size of the company, the CEO may or may not be heavily involved. Our CEO has approved the program, knows our apprentice and works around them, walks through them. He's not their main mentor, of course. And so knowing your decision makers and the companies that you're working with is very key. And you're going to waste a lot of time spinning your wheels if you don't get that quickly.
All right, we'll move on to the next set of questions. Another question came in around asking what kind of training do employers get for working with students and providing meaningful learning experiences? So wondering if there's any training that happens either on the employer side for that, or even if there's any training that's provided from the school system to employers who will be engaging with students in those work-based learning experiences.
Again, for ROI Incorporated, for us, they have facilitated some legal applications as the programs have grown in our local area. A lot of the employers weren't sure on youth hiring laws, just that they hadn't done it. And so they facilitated a lot of legal laws for Indiana wage and labor and some OSHA rules and regulations. Then they facilitate meetings with us. So our intermediary has been the key source in doing that for us.
Yeah, and for us, before we became official industry partners for PTech, we did have to go through an interview and an onboarding process. And then since then, the district and the PTech program has done a really good job of providing opportunities for further training. So they'll have an employer, an industry partner session that we're all invited to in order to just expand, what do we know about PTech?
So I would say same for Accenture. And internally, we position our leaders of our Learning to Lead program. So we staff that program where it's a cohort of students in each location. So we educate the co-leads for that program to understand how to work with high school students and the legalities and what to do, what not to do. And then we also have a training session for the college student leaders, because the college students are actually put on client projects. So as you can imagine, these college students can be, anywhere from 18 through 22. So there's still some things around, to Patrick's earlier point that you can do, can't do, engage the students, not engage the students, whether there's, happy hours and things like that. So we do have to be really cautious in some of that programming, even at the college level. So yes, we are very intentional about ensuring that we are prepared to host both high school students as well as college students.
And going along with that, I'm just going to pull on a thread, and this looked like it was a popular question in the chat too, with a lot of engagement around it. Folks are curious about what are the most common barriers preventing employers to work with CBOs or other external partners to create work-based learning experiences, and how do you go about tackling those challenges? So wondering if folks want to continue talking through anything they just brought up, or have some other barriers or challenges that they can provide some insight into.
I'll start. I'd say one barrier is funding. So as an example, Accenture funds the Learning to Lead program, meaning the content, the operational aspects, the excursions, the lunches, everything that happens on site with the faculty, et cetera. But the stipend piece is where oftentimes we have to identify a nonprofit partner and or government entity that is interested and has the funding to pay the stipends for the students. And the reason this is okay is because the students aren't working for Accenture. These high school students, it's actually a learning to program. We call it, an opportunity for them to develop and build skills and so forth. And we have a full curriculum. So we invest in the full program, but the challenge can be identifying the nonprofit that we can partner with that is going to be responsible for ensuring that the students receive their stipend and can process payroll, et cetera. Because while we do pay the college students because they are actually working for us, we can handle their payroll and payment and all the above, but it's the high school part that can often be a challenge. So when we roll out our Learning to Lead program across 20 locations, those of us that are driving the program in our location have to identify those entities, those nonprofit entities that have the process in place to not only fund it, but also pay the students the stipends.
I would echo that, funding can definitely be a barrier to running a program like this. For one of our college partners, which is Dallas College, they're the community college system here in Dallas that actually does offer a bachelor's degree in education. I think it's the only school in Texas that does so. We've been able to leverage federal work study funds. So we have a partnership with them where students are able to apply for a federal work study position under our Aspiring Teachers program. So that's helped us, find some ways to fund the program. But I would say just, that can be an ongoing challenging from figuring out, the budget to run this program, and then also figuring out how we're going to be able to pay students, many of who may be their first job, may not have access to a bank account yet, and those types of things.
Yeah, definitely the stipend piece is interesting because that's a core important piece of this apprenticeship program, of course. But then it gives us the more the buy-in, it gives the employer more the legal responsibility. So not only do I need to be involved with ROI in the schools for a educational plan, we have a whole performance plan piece in the workplace that we're also working on. So it's interesting on the barriers just to make sure that we have value to give to the students, and not just letting them be a job shadow. That I can tell our CEO, and in the end, we need to make a profit for our company, and throwing out money is dangerous. So I need to be accountable and showing here's the productivity. Here's a potential future employee. And so there's a lot of value add. Plus, again, as Marisol said, working with the schools is important. As a vendor to our local school, we go back and forth. As an internet service provider for this community, this young man can wear RTC Communication T-shirts into the school, talk about his job, raise interest with the other students. and market for us. So there's a lot of drive there and goes both ways if you think outside the box.
Absolutely, some free marketing. That's great. And I saw a lot of your heads nodding, Deanna, when you just mentioned funding at the very beginning, and obviously that was a thread across. And I'm hoping some other questions are answered, even in Marisol, your response around paying interns and students too. I want to just stay on, Pat, what you were talking about at the end in terms of, in a way, like showing return on investment for the company. And there was a question in the chat around what are the high impact, high leverage criteria needed to evaluate effective school business partnerships? Just wondering if any of you have any other thoughts around what specific criteria you might look for to know like this partnership is really working well. And Tristan, welcome your input on the other side of things too.
No lawsuits from us is always beneficial. But I first and foremost is the student satisfaction. Are we meeting the criteria for the program? Are we actually giving value to the student in their educational piece, as well as working towards company goals for future engagement? So making sure all of our original ideas are met and not getting off track, not letting the high school kid being stuck in the corner and not being allowed to do anything. Making sure there's a value program there is very key, and it takes intentional focus and monitoring.
And yeah, I would echo that sentiment about what the students get out of the program. So we do survey our interns in the middle of their internship and at the end of the internship to see what they feel they've gained from being part of the internship. And then we also survey the schools that they're working with. And so we just want to keep track of those and make sure we're getting that feedback that, you know, students feel. I mentioned it earlier, more confident and more self-assured and more prepared to enter, you know, college or career as their next step. So we take those surveys seriously, and so we make sure that the students understand why, you know, we're asking these questions of them, so that we can continue to improve our program and also, you know, just make any adjustments that need to be made.
And I would add that what makes a great partner for us is a partner that supports the students and positions the students for the opportunity. And it could be as simple as ensuring that they have a good resume to start with, and interview practice skills. We found that unfortunately, sometimes the students don't make it past the first level. They may have the right experience, but they haven't presented themselves well. So if schools and programs can start there with, you know, business presence and how to position themselves for these opportunities, it makes a world of difference when you know, because oftentimes we are asking volunteers to interview the students, and we want the students to show up as best as their best selves. So and sometimes, you know, as the industry partner or the person doing the hiring, we can't do all parts of it. We can't ensure that they have a good resume, ensure that they're practicing for interviews and so forth. So if the partner is focused on those components, so by the time they get to us, the students shine for their skill sets and what they bring, what they can bring to the opportunity.
Thank you all so much. I'm so sorry to have to end the Q&A portion, but we are at time. So I just hope everyone can join me in giving a huge thanks to Marisol, Pat, Deanna, and Tristan for joining us today. This was really a wonderful conversation. I'm loving the engagement that's continuing in the chat, and I'm going to pass it back to Charlotte to close us out.
Thank you, Caroline. And yes, just echoing the thanks to all of the panelists. This has been terrific and really helpful. And we really appreciate you joining us today and telling us all your secrets. So thank you very much. And just wanted to say to as we close out, we do hold webinars monthly. Our next one will be on February 25th with a focus on intermediaries and the role of intermediaries in supporting all of this work.